Hello and welcome to the 10th edition of Table Talk. My name is Aaron Cornbutt. I am so excited that you're joining us for this edition of Table Talk. So today I have three special guests. So I have three team members behind the Interface Designer launch coming to talk to us about how we got to Interface Designer, where it is today, how to create amazing interfaces with your collaborators in mind. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the future of Interface Designer. So couldn't be more excited to bring these folks onto Table Talk to kind of follow up last week's episode. So if you're new to Table Talk is a weekly live stream where we talk about all things Airtable focused around one kind of piece or one surface area of Airtable. So we wanted to do two sessions on Interface Designer, really so everyone here can get a sense of how to use it and really wow us with how you're using it. So I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces in the chat. We've got Rebecca, Vishal, welcome Zaid, welcome joining us, Shaz, Cyril, Ben, lots of excitement. So as always, two forms that you need to know about. First, you can submit questions to the team using the questionnaire form. And second, at the end, as always, we're going to draw some swag so you can represent your Airtable colors from your office, whether that's socks or a t-shirt you can pick. So make sure to fill out forms for the question. We've got some questions that have been submitted that we've picked that we're going to start with the team, but then we're going to go ahead and take your questions so that you can get the most value out of this session. So I'd love to know throughout, what are you building with Interface Designer? Let me know in the chat what are some examples of interfaces you've built or questions you might have for our experts. But without further ado, I really wanted to say that. So without further ado, let's bring on JB, Emily, and Alex onto Table Talk. Welcome, team. I'm so excited to have you all here. So we've got JB in the top left, Emily, and Alex. And luckily, our first question for today, I'm not sure which person foresaw what we're going to do today. Hallie knew that we're going to have some special guests today. So she said the first question she has is, let's go ahead and introduce every team member, talk a little bit about what your role is at Airtable, how long you've been here, and maybe give folks a little bit of what is your favorite Airtable base you've ever built. So couldn't be more excited to have you guys here. And the first person I'm going to nominate is JB. JB, welcome to Table Talk. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Airtable, and your favorite base.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. Hey, everyone. I'm JB. I'm a product manager on interfaces. I've been at Airtable 5.5 years now. And my favorite base, I don't know about my favorite base. The current one I've been using is for wedding planning. So that's been the latest one.
Is that your own wedding?
It is, yeah.
Oh, well, congratulations. Let's make sure everyone in the chat congratulate JB on his upcoming wedding. Congratulations. So 5.5 years, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of favorite Airtable bases.
Yeah, there have been a lot of them.
Awesome. Next, we have Emily. Emily, welcome to Table Talk. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Airtable and your favorite base.
Awesome. I'm so happy to be here. Hey, everybody. I am Emily. I'm a product designer here at Airtable working on interfaces. I've only been at Airtable for 6 months, but it's been like the best 6 months ever because I got to hang out with this crew and build a really cool product. My favorite base is probably, I have a guide to my favorite New York City restaurants and all of my ratings and recommendations. I'm very proud of it. I send it to all my friends when they come visit. So that's definitely favorite for me.
Well, as someone who lived 6 weeks in New York, I'm sure I would have loved to have that list. And I might be relocating in 2022, so I'd love to.
No way.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see if I don't know how I'm going to move all of the Table Talk set to New York, but that is definitely in the cards. And if you're open to it, I'm sure folks in the chat from New York would love to get your link. So
yes, I will find it. We'll get it out there for sure.
Absolutely. If anyone in the chat from New York or is thinking of going, let us know if you want Emily's reviews. And 6 months, that's a while for Airtable. So welcome. You're one of the ancients here already. So welcome.
Oh boy.
Excited to have you here today. And third, and definitely not least, we have Alex. Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself, when you joined Airtable, and your favorite Airtable base.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Alex. I am a product engineer on the interfaces team. And I've been at Airtable for, I guess about 4 years. I don't know. I like freelance part-time for quite a while at the start, so like I don't know where to count my start date as. I say 4 years. And I think my favorite Airtable base is maybe over the lockdown I got briefly incredibly obsessed with houseplants, and I have a houseplant base that is like how often I need to water everything, like where everything lives, if it needs to be like potted up, anything like that. I haven't actually added interfaces to it yet. I gotta get on that.
You gotta get on it. Is there like a checkbox like dead or alive? Like where you like I have a lot of house plants and they unfortunately all die. As you can see, I don't have any plants as opposed to yourself. So how have your plants been doing so far? Are they alive?
Let's just say there's a reason that my background is blurred currently.
Amazing. Well, welcome to you all on Table Talk. I'm so excited to have you. I think let's just jump into some of the questions we got, and we took these from last week where we did a session and we had a webinar on Interface Designer, and we got a lot of questions. So really appreciate folks. But first, before we jump in, we got to get ahead. We're not going to forget our good traditions here on Table Talk. Thank you all for introducing yourself. And now everyone gets confetti. Amazing. All right. So our second question from Jason, and this comes from last week's Table Talk. And JB, this one's for you, is what was the process of building Interface Designer? How much time did it take? How do we think about it internally? How did we get to the point where we wanted to build Interface Designer?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. To me, I think the process started like before I joined years ago. I think it's always been sort of part of the vision for the product and part of our long-term roadmap, right? We've always sort of viewed building software as having like three core components: the data, the logic, and the interface. So I think we knew that something like this would be in the cards for us a long time ago. I think after we launched automations last year, that was when we really started to say, okay, we've got data and logic, and now I think it's time to start building the interfaces piece. And so yeah, we spun up a team to start working on that about a year ago. Started out with just me and a designer on the team, and we were talking to a bunch of customers, trying to figure out what problems are we trying to solve, and what is sort of the form factor that will actually take shape. And so we explored a lot of different types of ways of building interfaces, and ultimately landed on the sort of drag and drop model that you see here. And from there, spun up a team of some pretty awesome people, including Alex and Emily. And yeah, got to work building. So over the past like 8 or 9 months or so, we've been sort of hard at work on what you see today, and still got a long roadmap ahead of us. But that's just a little bit of how we got here so far.
Yeah, I'd love to know. So give us to the folks a sense of how many are we talking? Like, so you're talking about a year. I'm sure you have some thoughts on how many hundreds of designs you did. So I'd love to kind of get a sense of how easy or difficult it was to kind of get to where we are today in terms of what it looks like.
Yeah, I think in terms of like the people, this was definitely a big sort of cross-functional effort within the company. Our core team on this was, I think, about 10 of us. But I think that's like grossly underestimating how many people actually contributed to this, between folks on our infrastructure team who help make sure that things run smoothly, to folks who are working on, say, the timeline view that is now also available as an element in Interface Designer. Countless other folks within the org just on engineering have sort of contributed to this launch. And then obviously we have a bunch of folks over on marketing and our customer success teams and implementation specialist teams who we've been working very closely with, and our research teams. So this has definitely been sort of a huge cross-functional effort. I'm sure I'm leaving folks out in that list already. And in terms of some of like the challenges, I think building just a 0 to 1 new sort of surface in Airtable, I think is generally pretty challenging, just because we have to sort of make sure that it fits into the broader Airtable picture, that it works with a lot of the different Lego blocks that you already have. And so just things like, getting our grid view into Interface Designer, or, getting all of like the ways that you can edit like cell values. So editing, a status field, for instance, and getting that working in a really clean way in Interface Designer. Emily and I had sort of countless conversations about those types of decisions. And so I think, really all up and down the stack, there were like huge decisions we had to make, and then, all the sort of fine details that we hope sort of shine through in the product.
Well, listen, you don't have to take it from me. All the questions we've seeing so far, and with this is amazing, right? So folks have questions, but I think overwhelmingly the response has been so exciting. And I remember when I joined Airtable, we talked about this logic and interface part, and I remember it feeling so far away that to have you all on Table Talk and actually talking about this thing that we've built is so exciting. So JB, thanks so much for kind of talking us through the process. So yeah, let's give you some confetti. Boom.
Nice.
Amazing. Okay, so question for Alex. This might be for the software engineers or kind of folks want to getting into the nitty gritty. So Alex, talk to us a little bit about all the different challenges that went into building Interface Designer.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the biggest things that I think we struggled with was we have so many ideas for where we want interfaces to go. There is so much like cool stuff that we talked about in like the months like running up to this launch that we knew that we were never going to have time to do for like November. And so one of the hardest things was trying to like make good progress and like build things fast for what we knew we did want to do, while still trying to like lay some of those foundations for the things that we know we want to do in the future. Or like make sure that we didn't do anything in a way that would make it harder for us to do those things in the future. So I think a lot of our time was sort of spent trying to figure out exactly where to draw some of those lines between laying the foundation for like what we want to do in the future and just getting the things that we know we need right now. I think one of the other things, which I think JB's kind of already touched on a little bit, is just interfaces touches so much of Airtable. And like grid view, for example, is one of the oldest parts of the Airtable code base. It's kind of cool, like when you're working on it, because you can go and you can see commits and code that are actually written by Howie, our CEO, like way back in like 2013 or something. And the world of like building software in the browser was very, very different in 2013 than what it is now. And generally, like the quality of the code at Airtable is like really, really high. But we do still have some of these like more like legacy areas. And because interfaces is just, there's just so much of it and it touches like so many different areas, particularly some of these like older, more like, components that have like been around for a while, like grid view. Making sure that we got everything like into interfaces without causing any like disruption or like breakage to like the main grid view was a little bit of a challenge at times. Lots of very careful refactors.
So should we understand that Howie's code might have been refactored as part of? You don't have to answer that question. That's not one of the questions. Let's just let folks who are watching connect the dots. Howie's code might have been written in 2012, and we might have looked at that code again, and who are we to say whether we've touched it or not? But I can imagine like going into any old thing that hasn't been touched or has been worked on for years might be extremely intimidating. So it's extremely impressive that you've been able to put all these things together and give something that looks as good and works as amazingly as Interface Designer. So kudos to you and kudos from everyone on weaving all of those challenges and getting something out the door. So thanks so much. let's go into our little agenda. Already seeing some questions come in. So if you have questions for the team, go ahead and submit them through the form. Don't forget to enter to win swag. And the most important and most joyful part of Table Talk, let's get some confetti. Amazing. Okay. Well, Emily, as the designer who designed, or one of the designers that designed Interface Designer, I thought it'd be really interesting for you to kind of answer this question that we got a lot, which is how should folks approach designing in Interface Designer? What is their mental model that they should be coming into? Who's it for? How do they find use cases that are like, oh, this is for Interface Designer? So we're gonna get a little meta here. Talk to us about designing in Interface Designer as the designer, one of the designers behind Interface Designer.
I love it. It's always so meta to talk about, which is fun. Yeah, great question. I think it's really easy when you're playing with this tool because I personally think it's really fun. It's easy kind of just to jump straight into a blank canvas and get really caught up in the nitty gritty of the building experience right away. But I think there's definitely a designer's perspective. But I think the key to designing a really great interface is kind of taking a step back from that for a minute and being really clear about two things, which is who am I building this for and what do they need to do with it? Those two things sound very simple, but I think keeping those in mind throughout the building process will help you make really good decisions along the way. And I can kind of go into some details, some tips and tricks. We can get started maybe by talking about interface layouts first. So when you create a new interface in Interface Designer, you get to choose your interface layout. And the layouts are kind of like templates for your interface that hook directly into the data in your base, and they're optimized for very specific workflows or scenarios. So if you're keeping in mind that question of who is this interface for, what do they need to do with it, it's really easy to pick a layout that is best optimized for your interface and your workflow. So we'll start with record review. That's a layout that is optimized for doing work on many records. It's kind of the perfect layout if you're designing an interface for people who are actually meant to update or triage specific data on specific records. Record summary is pretty similar, but it's more narrative driven. It's optimized for the people that maybe need to come into the page, digest a lot of information about a single record, but not necessarily take action on it. Dashboards, on the other hand, they're great for giving high level information about a lot of data all at once, even multiple tables. It's perfect for communicating with stakeholders who just kind of maybe need to get the overview of the data without going into the weeds of specific records. And for everything else, there's blank layout, so you can do whatever you want to do and customize your workflow very specifically to your collaborators and what they need to do within interfaces. So interface layouts is kind of that first manifestation of the questions of who is this for and what do they need to do. But those questions continue once you actually get onto the canvas. And if we, I think I have a page that we can go to called, yes, this one, the project tracker. Once you're actually in the canvas, you've got so many different possibilities of how to lay out your elements. And again, because there's just so many options here, it's really helpful to return to those questions. Who is this person? What are they trying to do? And the way that you lay out your elements on the page is definitely critical to how your users are going to understand and interact with your interface. So it's really important to give your interface a sense of hierarchy. We were really intentional about that idea of hierarchy when we were building Interface Designer. And we came up with all these different mechanisms and levers that you can pull to kind of create that hierarchy on the page. So we can walk through a few of them using the interface that Aaron is showing. And let's scroll down just a little bit. And we can talk about perfect. The first way that you can kind of create hierarchy on the page is by grouping similar elements together spatially. You scroll down just like a little bit more, you can see that that's what we've got. No, perfect. You're good. You can see that you've kind of done that here with the record picker and the two most important fields that are relevant to the project in the record picker. So if we take preview off, you can see a little bit about how that's built. I've put all of those things in columns next to one another, and I've grouped them all by giving them the same background color. So for your users, this is a great way of communicating with those end users about how this information is related to one another, which is great. Another mechanism of grouping, which is really effective that we have, is just the divider line element. Throw that in there, that kind of chunks up your interface into specific sections and helps people understand it a bit more. Another great way of communicating hierarchy is to give emphasis to specific fields. I think you'll see the project category here is this big red chiclet. It looks a little bit different than what it might look like in the base. And for your end user, they're going to see that. They're going to be like, oh, that's important. I should pay attention to that. And that's really a really key part of giving hierarchy to your interfaces, is letting people know what they should be focused on when they come to the page. Next up, this is one of my favorites. I think this is something that everyone on the team was really excited as we were building it, but the cool ways that you can visualize linked records in your interface. Today in the base, when you see linked records, they're kind of that chiclet or they're a card, but now you can visualize your linked records as a timeline, as a chart, as a grid. You can see this one is a grid of all of my tasks that are related to the projects. And it just gives so much more context as to how this information should be digested. So it's really important when you're looking at linked records, you can decide how you want that information to be communicated. And last but not least, this is like a lowbrow way of creating hierarchy, but I think it's probably one of the best, is to just use the text element everywhere. Style text to give it emphasis, use emojis or numbers to kind of guide your users through the page. Use text just to explain what to do on the page. I think that using text is a really great way to orient your users and make that hierarchy. And the whole benefit of using interfaces over the base is that you've got this power of what I'm showing and how I want to show it. So using all of these different tools at your disposal is a great way to make sure that you're getting the right people in and that they're able to do what they need to do. So lots of tips and tricks. I've got even more, but yeah, I think that those are some pieces of advice I'd give for people when they're first getting started with building.
So if folks want to remember one thing, who's it for and what are they going to do in it, right? So that's it. Those are the two tips, and it helps to have a design eye clearly, because I have to say my interfaces don't look anything as good as this one, right?
Now they can. You've got all the tips you need. You're good.
Well, I'm lucky enough to work with you. And so I'm, like a lot of, I'm sure folks rely on folks who are maybe better at Airtable or have a better design eye. I'll make sure that you review my interfaces and that they look maybe near as good as this one, or at least it's clear who's it for and what they have to do, and really kind of emphasizing that hierarchy. I love it's a great example. And there were a lot of questions of like, how do I use interfaces, or what is a good use case for it? And I think coming back to those questions, what is something that someone needs to do in my workflow, and what is that thing that they need to do, and can I create an interface for them to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to accomplish that work? Amazing. So really appreciate you sharing one of your interfaces. So that's really cool. Really
for sure,
that.
Of course.
Boom. Okay. Well, a reminder, folks, got about 20 minutes here. Really going to spend as much time as we can answering your questions. We already have 3 here. So 2 forms that are important. Make sure you fill out that swag form. JB's showing us an Airtable t-shirt that, although it won't be this one, it might look as cool as that one. So make sure you fill out the swag form. Ask your questions and add them to the form. And then we have a team here picking some that we can answer live. So question here, and I think this probably is for JB. So question from Coolvone, who's been actually creating really cool interfaces. So Coolvone, if you could share some of those in the chat. I've seen some of them. They're really impressive, and I love that you're sharing them with the community. So question from Coolvone was, how did you decide to label the release as beta versus something like alpha or something like no beta at all? So JB, would love to hear from you. How do we think about alpha, beta, and how we named interface designer, the beta part?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think this this was definitely sort of an interesting one as we were discussing it internally because, all of these labels mean different things to different people and different things depending on the company that's putting the label on a product. I think for us, the really important part here was sort of balancing out like one, like I said before, we have a long roadmap ahead of ourselves. We are, hard at work on this, and this is a major area of investment for, our company and our product development team. And so I think we really wanted to communicate to the market like this is step one in a longer journey, but you should expect a slew of updates sort of coming your way, as we keep going forward here. Um, but sort of balancing that out with, we want people to know that we feel pretty good about where the product is today, and we want people to use it. And so we don't want the sort of label that we're putting on it to like discourage usage. I know sometimes when, you see an alpha or a beta tag on some products, it might be, well, that company might actually, take the whole product away, or I shouldn't invest in it because it's not quite ready. And that's not how we feel here, right? I think it was very much like we feel good about what we've built so far, but want to communicate that it's so far and we, have quite a bit more to do. And so that to me is really the reason we put the beta tag on it, was to sort of communicate that to folks who are using it and, but without really saying like discouraging people from using it or us telling you it's not ready, because, that's not the case.
So JB, Table Talk exclusive, interface designer is here to stay, right? So we're not gonna bring it back to alpha, or we're not gonna hide it from folks, right? It's here to stay.
No, yeah, this is definitely a big area of investment for us. So I think you can pretty confidently say it's not going anywhere.
Amazing, cool. So really appreciate you kind of going behind the scenes, talking about how we decided between alpha, beta. I agree, different tools, different systems, or things beta means maybe it won't exist in 3 weeks, or we're testing it out. Interface designer is here to stay, and I think it means more that we were at a place where we felt comfortable sharing it, and most importantly, excited to see what everyone builds on it and kind of come back to us with feedback. So we have no lack of feedback. Appreciate everyone who's been sharing. Amazing, cool. Okay, let's go back here. Boom, let's go through our agenda, the favorite part. Oh no, I don't think we heard that one. That was on me. Let me do that again. Folks that didn't hear it, it's very important to the stream that we do this. Let me share it. Boom. There we go. Because if the confetti doesn't go through the stream, I hear about it for a week. Cool one, I fixed it. It's my fault. Don't blame anyone here. It's my fault. There we go. Amazing. All right. So question from Curse, or maybe Chris. Emily, JB, Alex, not sure who's this for. I'll let you put your hand up. Who wants to answer this one? Talking about apps, integrating apps into Interface Designer. So one of them was charts, right? Which is, you can create different charts in Interface Designer. So how do we think about bringing those into Interface Designer? And, considering we have so many things to bring into Interface Designer as well. So first, who's ready to put their hand up to answer that one? And then how do we think about that?
I can take this one too. Yeah, so first off, Alex and I both worked on apps in a prior life. And so, apps are near and dear to both of our hearts. We spent quite a bit of time working on the Blocks SDK and the whole app dashboard experience. And so that's definitely something that we, think about quite a bit. In terms of bringing that functionality into interfaces, I think it's definitely something that we're, thinking through and want to do. We definitely want to bring a lot of the functionality that you have in your app dashboards into interfaces. I think at the same rate, we want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that it feels like a really great experience in interfaces. And, so I think we want to think through whether, when it makes sense to just pull an app in directly versus when it makes sense to sort of, rethink how that same functionality should or could be packaged in interfaces. And so I think the short answer here is like, yes, we are thinking about it. We don't have anything like super concrete we can share on that just yet, but it's very, very top of mind for us as a team.
So folks in the chat are talking about something called blocks. So I think some people are confused. So maybe this was all like blocks as part of your past life, Alex and JB. Jokes aside, apps used to be called blocks. So if you ever want to show off that your Airtable knowledge, you can kind of slide in a blocks every now and then instead of the word apps. And folks that are in the know will be like, oh, must be using Airtable for a while to know about blocks.
Yeah, it's like the deep Airtable lore.
Right, exactly. I wonder if we have.
Unless you're a developer, because all of our developer stuff is still called blocks. So
Do we have
it's
do
actually
we have
not
some
that
block
deep.
swag? Because we could do a special table talk where we draw some ancient Airtable, some like retro Airtable swag. I feel like JB or Alex, we're gonna have to see in some raid places for some ancient swag. Cool. So really appreciate JB on that. I think apps crucial part of Airtable, and then that connection between interfaces and apps, something clearly that's been brought up from the community, and clearly something that we're actively thinking about and know how important it is to our users. So appreciate that insight. Okay, cool. Boom, coming back here. Are we ready? Are we? The 4-person setup forced me to add an extra click so folks can hear, and that threw me off my game. But I'm back. We've got the confetti. Folks who are worried about it is back. All right. So before we jump into what could be our last question, I do want to encourage folks to keep submitting questions into the form. Make sure that you've got the swag filled out, because if this is our last question, we're going to go ahead and jump into the swag. But go ahead, and for folks on the Airtable side, if we can pick some more questions, we do have some time here. All right. Right as I say that, we've got some more questions. So this question is clearly for Alex. So Alex, someone is asking, are you the same person who's wrote the on the scripting app Medium article? If so, what other articles have you written? Clearly impressed this person. And any thoughts about writing a similar article? So first, I'd love to know what this article is, because clearly this struck someone's imagination enough that they still remember it today. And if so, when are you following up this amazing article?
First of all, thank you. I'm flattered. I am that Alex. I did write the scripting post, which is for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of a post about how we designed the scripting app, and like how some of the decisions that went into trying to make a programming environment that's really good and easy to use for people who maybe aren't like expert programmers. And I actually would love to write some similar stuff about interfaces. My kind of like mini project that I like looked after for interfaces was our layout system, and like how like all the different ways that you can put elements next to each other, and like those like drag and drop interactions and like that sort of thing. And I would love to write some like deep dive articles into like some of the like little interactions and like details in there. I think layout is something that we spent a really long time talking about. There are a lot of like really cool prototypes and ideas from the team, and I think the layout system that we actually ended up with is pretty novel and unusual. So I'm pretty proud of it, and I would love to talk about it a bit more. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe if I have time, I would love to write something like that. Stay tuned, I guess.
So I'm actually just going ahead and adding that article into chat. That way folks can get it. So if you want to find it, I'm having some computer slow time issues. So if you want to get it, it's Alex Medium Airtable Scripting. That's where I wrote into Google to find it. So Alex, I think you have fans. So people want to read the article. And so amazing work as well on both the layout in interfaces and on the Airtable scripting app. If that person wasn't enough, I did not know how to write code, and I learned how to write JavaScript through the Airtable scripting app as well, thanks to the amazing environment. And so yeah, great work. And if folks are kind of thinking about, oh, I want to learn how to write Airtable scripts as well, we did a stream. We didn't call it Table Talk back then, called Learn Airtable Scripting. So write that into YouTube and you'll be able to find a 4-part series with Geo, who also is an ancient Airtable employee. Ancient, not because he's ancient in that he's worked here a while. And he does a great job of explaining to me and to everyone how to write Airtable scripts. So let's go back into here. All right. Boom. Great work, everyone. Okay, so a question from everybody. So the team behind the scenes has probably, I would say, probably about 40, 50 questions about everyone's individual desire of what they want in Table Talk, right? So everyone has something that they want seen in Interface Design or added to Interface Design. And I think that speaks to Emily and JB's and Alex's, like, your difficulty of picking what goes into this beta and what stays out. So a question from everyone, and I literally think we really mean everybody. What can you tell us about the short-term roadmap? How are you thinking of things that we're focused on today that we know are issues or things that people really want? So tell us a little bit. I'll let JB, Emily, Alex, whoever wants to take this one, talk to us a little bit about what areas we're thinking about and what does the roadmap generally look like for Interface Designer.
Yeah, I can take this one to start. So I think, like Alex mentioned before, we have like a ton of ideas of where the product can sort of continue to go from here, and a lot of them, we're super excited about, but they didn't quite make the cut for our initial like V1 launch. So we have a long roadmap ahead of ourselves, and there's no shortage of work to do going forward. I'm sure I'll miss some of the like most important ones that people have brought up, but just from seeing all the chatter on the community forum over the past week or so, I think a couple of themes or big ones that I've seen that are definitely top of mind for us. I think one is record creation. We are definitely aware that most real like app-like experiences have a very first-class way of creating records, and that's something we're very actively thinking about. So how can you create more guided flows for your team members to create records within interfaces? So that one, we hear you loud and clear. We're thinking about and working on that one. Another one that I've seen quite a bit is around, sort of the fact that right now you have to have access to a base in order to access interfaces. Similarly, very top of mind and something that we are actively working on. So I can't share too much in the way of details on that or timelines, but I can say we're actively working towards a world where you can actually share interfaces separate from the base, and where, in doing so, you're only actually sharing the subset of information necessary to power that interface. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're definitely working towards that. I think those are probably the two like heavy hitter ones that I've seen on the forum. If there are other features that you want more detail on, feel free to call them out explicitly, but those are the two I'll go over.
So two broad areas that folks can kind of take away as top of mind. First, adding records. I'm looking behind the scenes, and yeah, you've got your pulse on it. Adding records is definitely one. And then second, thinking about how does someone interact with an interface without necessarily having access to the underlying base, and thinking about, how does that work, right? And so again, something that we're actively thinking about. So appreciate peeking behind there. And I'm sure that is not the only things that we're thinking about. I'm sure those are the top two things. And that, again, looking at the questions, folks have a lot of requests. Emily, particularly for you, people are really excited about more colors. So
Yeah.
just gonna put that out there.
That's awesome. I mean, that's one of the most fun things about Airtable is how much fun and color we have, and I think we're really excited to bring that and a lot of other fun visual customization things to interfaces. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. There will be more color. We'll give the people what they want.
Got to give people what they want. And announce it on Table Talk. That's so usually we just quote the first part is give people what they want, but the actual full quote is give people what they want and come to Table Talk to tell them. That's I don't remember who said that, but that was actually the original quote. So it's okay, we can just use the first part, but just know that that was the actual quote. Cool. Okay. So hopefully that was enough for folks. Definitely on our mind. Appreciate JB giving us a peek behind the scenes. Boom. Amazing. Cool. Okay, question from Coolvone, our favorite. This question is around the different interfaces you can create in, and specifically write code in. So first, scripting app lets you create this kind of text interface. Second, custom app, really building your own app that has your own app-like UI with some components that you can use from Airtable's SDK. And then there's a question of now interfaces, right? Which is this new kind of UI component. How do we think about those three different ways of building in Airtable? Letting anyone answer this one, and I think a good answer would be when is scripting right versus when is a custom app right versus when an interface is right? And then maybe if we have any insights that we could share around longer term, where do we see those three evolving? So, any takers?
I can take this one to start, and then Alex, feel free to chime in because I know you have thoughts here as well. Yeah, like I said before, Alex and I have both worked a ton on the platform, and so we have lots and lots of thoughts about this that I think could be a whole separate session. I think a quick sort of answer here would be, I think we have sort of our like no code tools for building interfaces and for building logic in interface designer and automations, and then we also have our sort of ways to extend the platform with code, and so that would be the scripting app and custom apps. And so I think one way that we could sort of think about that is a time to use sort of our more code heavy tools like scripting or custom apps is when there's really some sort of idiosyncratic functionality that you need to inject into your Airtable workflow that sort of the core no code building blocks can't quite accomplish. And so this is your place to sort of extend the platform that we have. Whereas interfaces and automations I think is more user-friendly, approachable to folks who don't necessarily know how to code or don't necessarily want to write code in the moment, and where you can really sort of create those custom interfaces just through dragging and dropping various elements around. I think over time, one thing I'm very excited about is bringing some of those extensibility layers into interfaces themselves. I think that's sort of a longer term effort, but you could imagine in the future being able to actually build custom elements, for instance, that fit into sort of the interface system. And I think on that note, like one thing Alex and I have talked about many times over the years is really wanting the developer platform to sort of work in a way where like you can leverage all of like the other infrastructure that Airtable provides, right? So you can leverage the fact that we already handle accounts and authentication, that you have this real-time collaborative database that you can just plug into. And so that, we're really trying to reduce the scope of what you actually have to implement as a developer in order for it to be useful. And so I think that's what we're really sort of excited about going forward, is the idea that you could bring a script in or bring a custom element in and have it sort of immediately interact with all of the other sort of out of the box building blocks that we already provide, so you don't need to sort of reinvent the wheel many times over. So again, that's like a very high level explanation of where we could see this going. I think we could talk for hours on end about this topic, but yeah, Alex, anything else you want to add there?
Not really. I think that's a really great answer. I agree with everything JB said. I think the one thing I might add is just the way that we think about and talk about scripting and the Blocks SDK internally is that we often think of them as like escape hatches.
Mhm.
So like if you're building something in Airtable and you find you're like hitting a ceiling, hitting a limit, and you need to like go further or like customize further or like do some, like as JB says, some like really like idiosyncratic thing that like Airtable doesn't just support out of the box, and like Airtable isn't like super great at already. Scripting and the Blocks SDK can kind of function as these like escape hatches, so you can keep building up beyond that ceiling by doing this like custom thing and like writing some code. But like the majority of Airtable users and Airtable creators probably aren't programmers. Maybe like as much as I would love for like everyone to like learn JavaScript through like the scripting app and stuff and like write all their own custom software, like people aren't. And like we want the stuff that like Airtable can do out of the box to like support the majority of those things. So I think like if something can be achieved in interfaces, then like that is probably the place to do it, because it fits better and like more tightly with like the rest of Airtable currently. But yeah, as we like go and we like expand out, I would love to see more of these like more escape hatches in more areas. So I would love to, as JB says, like add escape hatches to interfaces too.
Yeah. So summarizing both is definitely something that we would love to enable more power creators, or really those folks seeing the building blocks that we're offering, whether that's views or records or whatever it is that you want to kind of work with in Airtable, and use our developer tools as the ability to go beyond what's available in what you call first class, I think, features, but really be able to extend the platform. And we are kind of know that that's a desire for interfaces as well. And hopefully, I'll keep learning. Scripting is, step one. Maybe I'll be, maybe one day I'll touch the SDK. I hope so. But if I don't, I hope, Alex, you'll come teach me. You'll come on Table Talk, whatever we'll call it that day, and teach us all how to escape hatch from Airtable. GB, you're welcome to. Sorry. Emily too. Whoever, you're all amazing teachers. So I'm really excited. Cool. Well, that was our last question, but don't go just yet. There's two things I do want to share with everyone right after the confetti. Let's get the important stuff out first. Boom. Okay, great. So there are, look, again, I'm peeking behind the scenes. There are a ton more questions. So I did want to give everyone another escape valve if they have questions that they'd like to ask that is not like emailing JB directly, which I don't recommend you do, because JB does not have email, does not use email. He's never even heard of the word email. On December 1st or 2nd, we're having an Ask Me Anything session with JB, again, in the community. So you can sign up to that. Come join a Zoom with JB and ask questions. And we're going to be probably going to have a much longer agenda, right? And answer questions a little quickly. And it's going to be with the whole community. So go ahead and make sure that you sign up. You're going to meet fantastic folks like Kulvon and Rebecca there as well, I'm sure. So it's an opportunity to ask questions to JB, but generally also to meet other creators in a way that, that is not on YouTube, that is not on Table Talk. And it'll be a little more intimate, and the ability to answer more questions. So I think it's that moment. We are going to go ahead and draw swag. Alex, or I hope you're going to be, I wrote the script to do the swag. There's a script I have to run, right? So I'm going to give, I wrote this. That also
this is my favorite scripting use case.
Right?
This is the best one.
It also means that it might not work. So, we do have a plan B if it doesn't work, which is the team behind the scenes, pick someone at random. But, okay. So just right now, if you haven't filled out the swag form, go ahead and do that right now. 5 seconds here. And I'm going to go ahead and run this. This is actually the most stressful part of Table Talk for me, I must admit, because I have very little faith in this script. Okay, let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Mona is this week's winner. So congratulations to Mona for winning some swag. If everything went right, there's actually a checkbox, and you should already have an email that lets you go ahead and get your swag. Again, I'm going to double check it after, but really appreciate Mona filling out. Appreciate everyone joining today. Huge thanks to you three for joining us. JB, Emily, Alex, thanking you one more time for coming on Table Talk, talking to us about Interface Designer, how we got there, how to use it today. Emily, thank you so much for that. And Alex and JB, where it's going from here. Clearly a lot of interest, so many things that people want to build on Interface Designer. So appreciate you all for building and continuing to build this amazing part of Airtable. So with that, I hope to see you another time on Table Talk. Thank you again for coming.
Thanks for having us, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for having us. And
Bye, everyone, for
great
joining.
script, by
Thanks
the
so
way.
much. I will see you in 2 weeks. So no Table Talk next week. We're off, and then we'll be back the following week, and I'll announce shortly what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, really appreciate joining. Don't forget to come to that Ask Me Anything with JB. Really appreciate you all. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.